This is a video of just some independent research I've been doing just past couple days thinking about this, and it's a topic that people have brought up before, and I'll show at the very end. I remember it was like just some small part of a John Levi video, and I'm of course not giving any endorsements or anything here, but it was an idea that stuck with me. And he showed a map of Coney Island and said that it was very extravagant, which I agree with, but then also that it looked industrial in nature, and I can't really disagree. A lot of that stuff, it does look industrial, and there are a lot of things that make sense about that angle. And all of this stuff, I love this topic of falsified history, because growing up, I could always tell that there was something totally BS about the standard narrative, the standard history. I do remember seeing old-timey photos growing up and getting weird vibes, like things weren't right. And so it's a topic that I love because it puts a lot of things into place. It gives you the correct perspective to understand that history resets are a thing, and to understand that there's grand cities built all over the world from past civilizations, and that we're living in the crumbs of empires of times past that were way more advanced than what we have today. And if you don't believe that in terms of computers and stuff, while I personally disagree, I think that there really is nothing new under the sun, even computer technology stuff. People live in a fantasy land and they think men on the moon and stuff. Anyways, getting distracted. I don't personally think that there's anything new under the sun, even what we think of as modern technology. But even to just look at the old photos, even if you're not going to get all tin hat conspiracy, you have to admit that the way that we generally think about the past today is so wrong, and that these people weren't wretched and they were stupid and everybody was dying young. How could that possibly be? And yet the most grand buildings that have ever been built, that were built to last for millennia, have already been built. How could they simultaneously be wretched and uneducated and stupid and know nothing, but somehow they're building the most magnificent structures that still put us in awe today? And today can not, it's a culture thing. We can tell that there existed a culture that's more rich than anything today. And technically, could we build some of the things today but that's where it brings me back to a culture thing. Our culture today is so obviously decayed, and it's people today that are dumber than ever. And you just read letters from times past, the way that people used to write to one another. It's breathtaking sometimes, the way simple communications would be. Who the heck were the men in tights? And who was coming up with the filigree designs that's all over the American Illuminati money, and what really was going on? And man, who knows? Lots of good questions. So I've already rambled enough. Let's get to the point. The thing about the technology, one like tidbit, I don't like to save my good information for the end of the videos. I like to front load it. Ferris wheel. Ferris, like somebody's name, which kind of reminds me of Eiffel for some reason. I don't know. Ferris, Eiffel. I don't know why they remind me of one another. But Ferris, if you spell it a different way, it means like relating to iron. And so I think that a Ferris wheel, maybe it was some sort of mechanical, it was an industrial related system, pulley, or I don't know, wheel system. I don't know what. But they probably just repurposed it and turned it into a ride. And yeah, roller coasters probably repurposed mine carts that were taking material from one place to another place, or who knows exactly what's going on. But I do think that a lot of that stuff could have been repurposed. Oh, this used to be some part of a industrial machinery, and they repurpose it and turn it into a ride. I think that there's something to that. It makes sense. Even the mechanisms for, like, the old school mechanisms for doing rides, if it's not all jazzed up like modern day Disneyland with the green buttons and the red buttons to make it more simple for today's people, the machinery was very industrial, like the levers and the times past, there was just a lot of that tech around. It makes me think of streetcars, and that was just a type of machinery that was very common in times past. It makes me think of steampunk, where people just lived with a sort of different type of technology. People didn't value China plastic stuff and computer chips. They valued mechanical things that could last for a lifetime. And anyways, this is a strange topic. I've already said a lot, so I want to fly through my slides and figure out the reason I picked the slide that I did and make a comment and just get through this video. But this is a topic that people could look into. It's like there's a hidden golden age of amusement parks in times past. And I think it makes sense under the lens of these were repurposed old industrial zones that were all over the place. And that's how they were popping up all over the place. In our modern minds, we think of amusement parks as being like something new that came about with Disneyland. But this has always been a thing, apparently. Who knows? How can somebody write a book on lost amusement parks of Pennsylvania? Like, why? How is that even a thing, that there's enough amusement parks in Pennsylvania that are lost? And what's crazy to me, too, is how, it's like every town had an amusement park back in the day, just like every town back in the day used to have streetcars that have now been decommissioned. There's just this theme. It makes my brain, like, I can feel the puzzle pieces coming into place, connecting. There used to be too much infrastructure. One of the very first things that happens after a reset is they have to start falsifying history. They're posing all these dead people up and taking 20 different photographs of them with different outfits on and pretending that they're 20 different people, because they have to falsify history, claim who built all of these buildings all over the place. They have all this extra stuff that they're trying to either demolish or repurpose. And that's what the mad scramble is right after a reset. And it takes a while. It takes a while for after a reset, it takes a while for the whole world to be repopulating. So surprisingly, it can be 100 years after a reset and they're still writing new BS and digging things out of the mud and coming up with ways to either repurpose it or come up with a backstory that's believable. And it's hardly believable. So I don't know. There could be something. And if you think about it, this is just my like roller coaster mind enthusiast. Looking at the picture of the Coney Island, like when I think of a modern day amusement park, different roller coasters have different appeals to them. You don't build another roller coaster that's basically the same thing. And there's something to that classic roller coaster design of a lift hill, and then you turn around and you go down and you come back up, and then you turn around and you go down and you come back up. That totally could have been an industrial something. Maybe that's just like a cooling area and maybe they just repurpose it a little bit and make it run faster to be an amusement thing. I don't know. But there's something about that classic roller coaster design of you go up, you go down, turn around, down, turn around, down, turn around. There would be no reason to build like 10 of the same roller coaster in one amusement park. But looking at those old Coney Island photos, it almost looks like they're building the same roller coaster like 10 times. And then there's like smokestacks next to it. Strange vibes. So, I don't know. I'm interested in what you guys think. You're going to look at how massive the woman on the right towers over her husband. Wow. Yeah, you got Roberto's going all the way back. A period photo. Yeah, I've already said a lot. And look at this old photo. This photo gives me weird vibes. This makes me think of, this photo was like, man, I imagine that there's rich families out there, families that go back generations. But you know, how many generations? That's another clue about when the last reset is. You don't know any John Smith the 17. Why is there not a John Smith the 17? Well, because the last reset only goes back 5 or so generations. The only eighths and stuff are in the history books, so who knows if they were even real. But this photo, it gives me like Yeti vibes, like I'm gonna see a unicorn or something in this image. There probably are people out there that have family photo albums that have really rare old photos of the way the old world was. That's just the way that this photo gives me strange vibes. They say it's mid 20th century photo, but I mean, just the vibes of it. Like ghostly, otherworldly feeling vibes. Who were these bozos? Who were these people? And they're all always dressed up so fancy. They always have hats on. Was there something weird going on with the sky? Is this where acid rain actually was a thing? So, apply your tin foil hat right now. I believe that part of the last reset had to do with just blowing a bunch of crap in the sky, blocking out the sun for a couple years. A lot of people would die from that. Most people would die if the system just shut down. If like the world governments just ghosted everybody, and the transportation systems and all of that, if it all just went offline one day and everybody got ghosted by the governments, which I'm sure is what happens, and they just go underground, and they started blasting ash into the sky for a couple years, and then they come out of their bunkers after a while, I imagine that the weather is really screwed up for a while. A lot of times it's like, aren't you hot? Aren't you uncomfortable? Maybe this is the Ice Age stuff, the little mini Ice Ages that they talk about. I think that could be a part of resets. Depopulation, totally destroy the atmosphere so that people can't even survive if they are on the surface, and then they come out of their bunkers and start it all over again. Because who are these bozos? They often look like gangsters. And their attire, everybody agrees to wear a hat. What's up with that? Nobody's like, nah, I don't like hats. It's like they have a one world society already at this point. They I don't know, strange vibes from this time period. And all the asylums. Oh man, there's just so much to unpack here. But when you understand the whole history reset thing, it all makes so much sense. I think that there's consensus that the asylums are where they put people that wouldn't stop talking about the old world. If you wouldn't hush hush and usher in the new world order and make all the talking points the same lies and talking points and gaslight the people. Oh yeah, I built that. Oh yeah, that castle looking thing that looks 200 years old, I built that last week. If you don't go along with the show, they stick you in an asylum. I believe that. So, oh man, I can't let this video be too long. So I want to go through the slides. There was one park in Portland in particular that piqued my interest. Portland, Oregon. Oregon is very interesting. I think that what makes Oregon special is it's one of the last untapped places where it's like they knew that there was a bunch of old world stuff waiting out here to be rediscovered, but it was just like nobody went there yet. It was waiting to be founded, and so it's interesting. As the fourth oldest amusement park still in operation, whatever. Oh wait, this is a different. I don't think this is the Portland, Oregon one. This is the photos and slides I picked for this are a little disorganized, but I'm just trying to paint an overall picture anyways. So. So these people had a lot of leisure time, I think. And I think that's part of why these amusement parks could pop up everywhere, is I think that they had a lot of time for amusement back then, because they had it was like kids in a playground. All of this infrastructure everywhere waiting to be reclaimed, and the populations are still low. There's not that much to do. And that's why I think that's why the times feel so chaotic and wacky. The wacky times. Anyways. Luna Park. There's multiple places called Luna Park. Doesn't this have this has the same vibes as what do you call it? Oh man. My mind is going blank. Same vibes as the fairs, the world fairs or whatever that they would put on. So I'm just going to go through these now and look for, baby incubator exhibit, red flag. What was going on? And the way that they were lit up makes today pale in comparison. So this is just one of the things that I want to put out there. We are living in the crumbs of the post reset society. Wherever society was at the last reset is miles ahead of where we are right now. The society was a lot better functioning, more healthier, more spectacular. Look at that. Disneyland. Why is Disneyland in our minds like this fresh new thing when they were living in it? That was just a common thing. Every town had a Disneyland back in the day, but we just don't know about it nowadays. And okay, it was maybe slightly different, but I mean, look, this is spectacular. That's as spectacular as Disneyland. Something about this style too, where it's like a photograph, but then it's like drawn. It's very interesting. I love the aesthetic. All of the business stuff. The domes, spires, towers, 250,000 electrical lights. Isn't this all very extravagant for what should be like a fresh technology? I don't know. This is just, today we think that we think very incorrectly about times past. And if you go and you start to research, you start to get your hands dirty looking at the archives, it'll blow your mind what was actually happening. And almost all of these places were destroyed by fire. And what I found very interesting, yeah, a lot of these places were fairly modern in their, it's like they're newly dug out of the mud and repurposed. I think in the early 1900s, I think there was still a lot happening in terms of getting this fresh reset going. It takes a while to dig places out of mud and get places going back up. And a lot of effort was dumped into the big cities and the East Coast, America, Europe, where more fringe places were left undiscovered. But even some random ruin in the middle of a wooded area could still be undiscovered today. One of the big lies that they like to tell people is, oh, everything's already been discovered. There's nothing out there for you to discover. People, don't worry about it. Go back, watch your TV or whatever. And these days, I've been seeing 2 instances very recently of people showing off really cool rocks that they found on their property, and like with strange engravings on it. It's crazy. There's still stuff to be discovered. Okay, so what's interesting from this one is they're already pushing the going to the moon agenda here. There was a wildly successful ride called A Trip to the Moon. This reminds me of, I was reading some early 1900 religious book, and they were pushing the balls like no other. They started a long time ago with this going to the moon thing. They've always known that that's where they're going. I think that Babylon is a society, and it's this thing, the Santa Claus thing, going along with the joke. There being a class of people that know that it's all a joke, and then there's the duped people that just all go along with the Spaceball stuff. I think they've done this before. I think they've done going to the moon, sending people to the moon. I think all of this has been done before. Devastating fires. There's more Luna parks. So I think that's interesting. Maybe, I don't know, where was it already called Luna Park? What's going on there? Just a early brand name thing happening. I have no idea. It seems just so wild, the things that were going on in times past, but at the same time, highly bureaucratic. It's like it's all business in this time period. It's all business and all these big shots and the land deals and land being given or donated, or it's just strange how bureaucratic everything is, but it seems like the Wild West at the same time. There's so many contrasting ideas. It's because this is a cusp in history when there's a new reset and it's a mad scramble for grabbing as much old infrastructure as you can. Who can repurpose it the best, come up with the best BS stories for it. And you see that there's some like the third world countries out there are the ones that are like still scrambling to dig their stuff out of the mud at this point in the reset. And anyways, Luna Park, they have some strange sayings. Like the old Coney Island, bright orange, of course, and it was like the happy place, bright orange, and it has this clown or some face that looks like a maniacal like smile, demented smile on it. And this one, the land of laughter, it just seems like there's a sinisterness to it, like it's all a joke, but kind of a sinister one. On the right side there, doesn't that almost look like a UFO and beings being teleported to it, like abducted? A masthead developed in 1906. This just had Freemasonry written all over it. Picnic pavilion, laurel line, a lot of alliteration. That's kind of red flags for Masonic nonsense. But here, the Scenatorium, the Temple of Mystery. Yeah, this has Freemasonry written all over it. What was that, black and white checkerboard under here? Yeah. See on the right side, whatever that is, that the ice cream stand, the soda shop? Black and white checkerboard. This, when I saw this, I was like, oh, that's a good one. This is a good one. The Marvels of Luna Park, how a 39-acre mud hole. Wow. So something about the resets. There leaves a lot of mud in places. There's a lot of disaster on the surface of the earth when they do these resets, I believe. Probably a lot of storms. Who knows the storms that get caused if they do an ecological reset of this place. This place it's like a snow globe. They can reset it by shaking up the inside enough. They can reset this place. And of course, Satan likes to imitate God, and God has reset this place famously, and God will reset this place again with fire. So it makes sense to me that Satan and his cronies would also attempt to do resets in this place. And I think that there's fringe survivors, and those end up being the native groups and all that. Anyways, there's a lot here, a lot to unpack with this fake history thing. But it's one of my favorite topics, which is interesting because, yeah, I used to hate history so much. But I think it's just because some of us can tell it's a bunch of bullshit. Yeah, there's this wild, in my opinion, there's this wild disconnect between it's all business all the time, very bureaucratic happenings, but at the same time, it seems like wild, wild west, like anything goes. And in my mind, that's wild. That it seems very business oriented, and then they're smashing trains together. And the most famous people, we'll get to that. They're doing balloon stunts, and it just, none of it makes any sense. And to me, it makes the most sense when you think of it in this frames of kids in a candy shop or kids playing in the biggest sandbox. Imagine how much fun that would be to be the first people in a reset and you even have the advantage of knowing it's all bullshit and knowing what you're finding are ancient relics and the last civilization, the pinnacle of a last civilization. You're moving into, and who knows, in some instances, maybe the survivors, they weren't like the highest high up. So, you just used to be some Joe Schmo who happened to survive the reset. And now you can go move into an area and pick out the coolest mansion and say, hey, I built that 5 years ago. It would be fun. And that's what a lot of times it looks like. These people are having the time of their life. Well, I don't know. It's strange because there's always these strange disconnects. The time of their life. When I think of that, it's the images where you see they're hanging out of the balconies. There's this grand old building, and you see they're hanging out of the windows. They're on the rooftops. It's like anything goes. Where's OSHA? Why is it so business forward and they're able to build these masterfully built cities with all of that going on, but OSHA stuff doesn't exist? Like it doesn't make sense when you have to believe the story that they tell. But it makes so much sense when you understand that history resets happen. This world is built off BS. The pen is mightier than the sword. They have the ability to reset populations and then start writing furiously fake backstories, posing up dead people to be fake historical characters, on and on. What's with the hats, though, really? How do you convince everybody to wear a hat? That is strange. But, maybe acid rain really was a thing. Maybe you would wear a hat. There's something weird about the skies, too. Something strange about the skies in the old photos. Like, a lot of times they're washed out. They don't want us to see the skies, or there's an odd quality to it. A lot of odd sky phenomenon happening. Everybody's all dressed up all the time, wearing hats, always wearing the same types of clothes. It's too odd. Too strange. So it's fun trying to piece together what really was happening. But I think that it's one of those truths that can't be denied once you see it. That we're living, when they say that we're living on the shoulders of giants, that's a truth. They're being literal, and they're being literal about the giants too, because the Nephilim were giants. Each generation is living in more and more crumbled state of where we once were. It really was once the case that a unified society was almost entirely over the earth and built all the magnificent stuff that we see all over. Yeah, I do believe that. That's why every city has a downtown with the same looking theaters. I think that I think movies have always been a thing. I think that some of those first movies, we'll get to that. I'll mention that in a second. Here's some trigger words, buzzwords, code words. Anchor is, what do you call that when, an acronym? Or no, anagram? When you move the letters around. Archon, anchor are just ideas you see a lot of times. Maybe anchor is meaning like the anchor generation is the one generation that was alive at the last reset. They're like the anchor. I don't know. But they certainly like that imagery a lot of times. Relied on specific anchor amusements and taking advantage of scenic location. Ingersoll himself described the park as being of 3 parts. Oh, like God? So maybe this is an introductory video. I obviously have a lot to say, a lot to ramble on the topic of fake history. I want to try to keep it somewhat focused in this video on the amusement park aspect. I think there is something to amusement parks being repurposed industrial zones of times past. I think there's something to that. And that, separate railways, they could have easily just been, railways meant for transporting goods. And now you stick people in it and it's an amusement park ride. There's a sanatorium, kind of a play on sanatorium. I don't know. What a strange time to be alive, though, where famous and wealthy for flying exhibitions, aerial stunts, aerobatics, it's just not what you think of as being the times past. Aerobatics people were the most famous, a leopard act, a world famous leopard act. Where's there a world, like, it's hard to put yourself in the time where a leopard act is world famous. Oh, have you heard of that Dolores, that leopard act? It just, I think it puts into perspective, it's a small world, and it really was a small world at this point, but there's something so Wild West about it, like anything goes, anybody could do anything at this point, and everybody was trying their own way to get started, to get noticed. This is the time period where, tourist traps were just everywhere. Everybody was making up ways to try to get people to come and spend their money, their leisurely time, and it's just a weird time. And slowly the puzzle pieces are falling into place. But I think it's clear that they were working with something that's better than what we have today. They were a small populace. They were unified in their goofy outfits and their hats. And they were working with a lot. They had a lot to play with. And that's why it often looks like they were playing with stuff and smashing trains together and hanging out the windows and yeah. All the extravagance. Why doesn't modern Disneyland have a bunch of railways and streetcars going into it? That would make too much sense. That would be too much of an organized society to have well thought out public transportation going to an amusement place. But why in the 1900s, why in the early 1900s did every single city basically have a trolley system? It's backwards. That doesn't make sense. Why are we living in a lesser society today than the people that were supposed to be starting it? And it's clear that it's because we're living in the crumbs and they're actively trying to destroy history and destroy the past. And each reset, there's less and less and less of the past to see. And yep. They had to add the parking lots there. They had a bunch of rail facilities first. That's so backwards that you would have all of these rail access. And then, I mean, and that's where they're going to tell you, they feed you their own version of the timeline of invention. Well, it's because the automobile was invented later, where that's just there might be a grain of truth to it. It's just that the automobile technology was put online later than they dug up the old railways and got those online. It was easier to get the rails up and moving again than automobiles were just probably obsolete at that point in the previous world. The one that was reset, maybe automobiles were just obsolete at that point, because clearly they had really good public transportation, because every dang little city out here in America used to have streetcars. That doesn't make sense. That there used to be better public transportation all over America than there is today, unless you understand that we are seeing entropy happening. There is a constant state of decay, and that it's just covered up with BS stories. The Masons just say, hey, I built that 5 years ago. And really, the way that they get away with this is that they just bury the stories and they just expect people to forget about it. And you'll never know about any of this stuff unless you start to look into it. And ain't nobody got the time for that when they're trying to pay their bills. So, again, so much rambling. This has officially become a ramble video. This was really interesting. A month's delay. They can put on these they can build the world fairs, they can build these extravagant buildings and railways, but there's a month's delay on making an ostrich farm. There's so many disconnects like that. In one of them, the Luna Park, or I don't know if it's a Luna Park actually. There's one in Portland. I don't even know if I've gone to that one, but it's just making me think of that. They can allegedly build these amazing structures that eventually get burned down, but then they'll show you a picture of these gangster-looking peoples outside of a wooden shack. Which is it? Do you build these elaborate buildings, or do you build wooden shacks? And you constantly see that disconnect. How do they build it? Why is it a month delay for a flippin' ostrich farm? And look, they gazed at the birds for hours. Why was that the attraction? And it's because they were probably bored of. It's because there was an amusement park on every street corner at that point. Allegedly, this is the beginning of research on old-timey amusement parks, and other people should look into it. But there are too many amusement parks in times past, and it's just one of those things where they bury the past and they want you to think that amusement parks were invented with Disney. But no. There's a rich history of amusement parks, and it should get your noggin thinking. Why? What a strange people. What a strange history we have, that amusement parks have such a rich history. Yep. And it's strange that the ostriches really drew in a crowd. Funhouse, Alligator Zoo, Glass Blowing Exhibit, Miniature Railroad. Competition from other parks, copying the Luna recipe. How could there be competition back then on such a fringe, what you would think of as being a fringe thing? No, there was steep competition. Where's all the amusement parks today? You have to go way out of your way to find an amusement park today, but it seems like there were so many back in the day that there was competition. This was an interesting one. And look, doing the devil horns with the hands. And look at the hands. Those are massive hands. But subtly doing the devil horns. So, what I'm going to do for the rest of this video is go through the slides, try to see the reason. Oh, moving picture screens displaying first-run films. Untitled dailies from moving companies out of New York. I firmly believe that a lot of those old movies that have just been lost now forever, I think that those were old movies dug up from the old time, from the old society, old Tatarian or whatever you want to call them movies. I think that there were societies in times past that had movies, and I think some of them survived, and they passed them off as, oh yeah, I made that last week. And I think that they would find doubles, they would find people that looked alike and pass them off as, oh, this is the actress. I think maybe sometimes the audio was missing or deleted on purpose, and the whole silent era, I think a lot of stuff was added in. You know, maybe they used to have the audio and maybe they deleted it, or maybe it was degraded, and so they added in those slides saying what used to happen. I don't know, but there's a reason that there's movie theaters all over America and the world that look the exact same. They have the same vibes. I think those were movie theaters, and I think that they simply were turned back into movie theaters. So, yep, they had an outdoor moving picture screen displaying first-run films, many of which were untitled dailies. That just seems like they had huge surplus. They just had piles of archives, and nobody had any context for any of this stuff. That's how they could... The fact that it's called dailies makes me think of, they just had a giant pile, and oh, we got another shipment of dailies from New York of old movies. Put this one on. Oh, nobody's ever seen that before. Maybe people saw it once and it got thrown in the garbage. There was so much surplus in this time. It reminds me of the train crashes. It was entertainment in this time to smash trains together. They had too much stuff in this time period. People had too much leisurely time. That's why there was competitions between amusement parks, because they hadn't built this House of Cards BS system that we have today, where people have to work so hard just to pay rent. There was surplus everything. If you didn't have to pay rent, you would walk in the woods for a while until you find an abandoned city, and just that's yours now. Say you built it. This is the real history, and it makes everything make so much more sense. That's why the photos of these people, where they have the most outrageous biographies full of the most insane achievements. How did these people achieve these things? And they look like a bozo in a suit. It's because they literally just walk into this place, say, I found this. Founded means found. They put a plaque on a building, and they do that all over the town. They make up a dozen fake people. This is what they are good at doing, is making up history, making up fake people. And then they write a book about it, and then it becomes reality. Scheme. These people were always scheming people to come in, and they were building fake places. I was just reading it. I mean, not just reading about it, but in Oregon, there's a place that's like a cave system. But then they say, if you read the history of it, they were like bombing out giant sections, and tourist traps like that are very often like hoaxes. There's this place, where is it? Ruby Falls is kind of a well-known hoax, but it's like it's allowed to keep operating, even though so many people know it's a hoax. This is the Santa Claus reality we live in. The Babylon, Mystery Babylon. The mystery is that you live in a mind construct that is completely fabricated, and so many people know that it's fake. That's the joke. That's the mystery. Anyways, you see this as above, so below. You see that thing. You see that everywhere in society at all sorts of different levels, where there will be grand deceptions going on, but everybody just goes along with it and pretends to not see it. The emperor has no clothes that is what that is all about. It's about the fact that we live in that. We live in an emperor has no clothes. The no clothes is the outer space stuff. It's Ruby Falls. I hope I'm getting that correct. So Ruby Falls, I believe that's what it's called. It's a tourist trap. They claim to have this beautiful underground cave system waterfall, but it's pumped water, and it's always been pumped water. And people who work there figure out that it's pumped water, and they know about it, and then they try to expose it, but it's like nobody cares. That's how this place works, and they know, and they see that happen over and over and over again. They see fraud happen and get exposed, and then just they keep going on with life as if nothing ever happened, and the public still doesn't understand that it's a hoax. By the time you've seen that happen for the 100th time, people take advantage of that, and they realize, oh, people are really gullible. And even if I get exposed, I can just keep marching forward like I never got exposed, and people still will have no idea. That's the society. That's where we live. So you can read this if you want. I was just cracking up at how full of deceit, and it reminds me of Red Dead Redemption 2, I think. Is that the game? Maybe it's not the second one. Maybe it's the first one, where there's this like carnival type Ringling brother. I don't know. He's like a sideshow act person. I think he calls himself an alchemist. And what do you know? You find out that his zebra is actually a painted horse. Yep. If you watch my fake animal videos, you know more about that little secret. Okay. Yeah, there's a strange disconnect in my mind between how everything seems so business oriented, and yet it seems like wild, wild west at the same time. Baby incubator. What was going on with the baby incubators? A lot of these places are just totally forgotten about, covered by an interstate. Well, that's how a lot of these old world places, they eventually just get demolished and you'll never know about it. In the city where I live, there used to be a really cool old world looking school here. And the story that they tell you about it is such BS. And nowadays it's just a park where there's a bunch of homeless people. It's like there was no reason for you to demolish the school. It could very much still be used as a school today. Schools exactly like it. Old world schools with the full basement, full sunken basement are still in operation all over America today. It's just that some of them get demolished and covered up with whatever, and it's a parking lot or a park, and then you'll never know about it unless you read the plaque or you go through the archives of the photos. And speaking of the photo archives, it's very clear during that Victorian era / the early 1900s, there's something strange about that, how it very much looks like somebody is photo documenting everything, taking photo evidence and scratching. Do you know what I'm talking about? Where it's like they scratch on the photo what the photo's of. They very much had a lot of people who their job was to go out and photo document all of the old whatever's out there that needs to be reclaimed. And it's all business. It's all who can buy up all of this old world stuff and pass it off. You had to be able to, I think that the services that people had to be able to provide back then were the ability to come up with all the fake backstories and fill up that, refurbish that old factory and get it running again, making something. This just popped into my mind. Maybe that's the whole idea of Acme and everything made by Acme. They had to go into these old factories and, well, okay, we either have to demolish this or like we have to start doing something. We got to build it. We got to, they often were faced with that. We got to turn this into something or it has to go. And a lot of times they just have to turn it into something. And that's why you have like 50 churches in a city where today it still doesn't even make sense for there to be 50 churches there. And yeah, there's been some really good videos that people have made of, were all of these churches actually churches? Maybe they were utilities. Maybe some of those were utilities. I think that there's something to that. A lot of those could be utilities. In the town where I'm at, there's a lot of these buildings right next to one another, and I can tell, oh, that tower used to be way taller than it is now. And it looks just like other old world towers. And anyways, so much rambling. There's a 30 songs, 300 minimum visitors. That's a 33. Strange phenomenons going on. Dance crazes. There's some parts here that you'll have to apply your tin hat. Let me just quickly read through my last slides. Dancing was a huge thing. Dance crazes. And blah, blah, blah. You know, the amusement parks weren't enough. The dancing, they had to change things quickly for whatever the public was into. Very, very public driven. Could you imagine? That's like the opposite of today. The corporations jam down our throats. You want this, take this product. But back then, you know, who cares that you invested all this money, allegedly, to build an amusement park? The people want dancing, we'll give them dancing. It just seems very contrary to business today. Very opportunistic, you know, flavor of the week. What are those crazy kids these days? Oh, they're into dancing. Let's make it about dancing. Man, wouldn't it take a long time to even just get a place to be so beautifully, to just look so beautiful with those vines and stuff? It looks almost overgrown, but what do I know? This was happening in Japan too. Ferris, I talked earlier today about ferris and how it could have something to do with iron, because ferris actually means iron. They tell us all sorts of stories about giant things being moved. I just picked this because they're talking about skyscrapers. Skyscrapers aren't new. And if you watch other channels that talk about fake history and show old maps and stuff, yeah, there's old maps that have pictures of skyscrapers, clear as day. Manhattan, I mean, I don't know if it's Manhattan. I know nothing about New York City. But New York City has really old world looking skyscrapers. And very impressive even today, these giant old masonry buildings and old pictures of like airships and stuff. That's another thing I didn't talk about a lot in this, but there were a lot of airship talks. I think a lot of my photos, I had photos that didn't end up making it into this for whatever reason, but maybe that'll be another video on this. You know what? I think it's all my videos about the Portland thing. The Portland, Oregon one. Because the Luna Park, wait, was it called Luna Park? Forgive me. There was an amusement park in Oregon, in Portland, Oregon. Two of them right next door to one another. And there was mention of how there weren't really windows in this dance hall, but there were openings that were covered in chicken wire. And the dancers found out very quickly, and they were mentioning that you don't touch the chicken wire because you get electrocuted. And that was just so bizarre to me, and started, apply tin foil, started making me think of, and my friend, I'll say what my friend said, they were like, oh man, maybe they were using the dancers to generate electricity. And yeah, maybe they were testing those buildings, that those buildings were generating free electricity just by humans being there and dancing around. Yeah, this is definitely going to take a second video. So, you know, if you're troubled by the sporadic or rambly nature of this video, there will be a more focused video talking specifically about this one park in Portland, Oregon. Well, there's two parks, but this one in particular has a lot of strange happenings going on. And yeah, we'll do a deeper dive into that one, since this was like more of a vague overview. What's going on in Japan? Man, Japan has the same stuff. It's all the same stuff all over the world. Anyways, here was the photo that I believe John Levi had, and yeah, a lot of it does look industrial in nature. You see some smokestacks. No, is that really an amusement park ride? A lot of the same looking. This is where I just had the opinion of, I said it earlier, I know. Does it really make sense to build 20 of the same exact roller coaster? Like, wouldn't you want to diversify? Does it make sense to build, you go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and then there's like really small ones? You could go over this photo with a fine-tooth comb. How many flippin', excuse my, why? It's extravagant for even today. But this was allegedly happening back on 1906, Coney Island. Man, And see, this isn't that long ago. This really isn't that long ago. So how do they get away with rewriting history up to such current levels? And I think that a lot of it has to do with the fact that, I mean, if there was a history reset, like when did they actually, okay, slaughter everybody, and okay, the atmosphere's full of dust for those years, like when did those years happen? Versus, because it only takes so many generations to completely flip things. So by the 1900s, if the actual reset, like killing people, happened, by the early 1900s, you're only a couple generations in. They're probably still digging places out of the mud at this point. There's probably still undiscovered places that are being repurposed, or histories are being rewritten, retcons are still happening. But anyways, like over here, this is just wild looking what's going on. Who knows? But is that like an oil platform? Ferris wheels, having something to do with the iron industry, though. Processing iron. I don't know. Maybe it's magnetic. Maybe they were some sort of magnet thing. I don't know. But seems industrial to me. Anyways, quite the ramble of the video. I promise a follow-up video to this that is more focused in on this Portland one, because I'm noticing that the images that I had weren't here for the park. I think it's a park that starts with an L. Portland, Oregon. Not there anymore, of course. Now a bunch of rich people live there. These places almost always mysteriously burn down and then get replaced with like fancy people housing or apartments or something. Hope you enjoyed this video. God bless everyone.